assuming, might have come here today because you're frustrated by the prevailing stories that are being told about public health right now. So we're going to talk today about how to tell the kind of stories that can actually shift the conversation around public health. Okay, so this training is just one of many ways that the Center for Health Communication is equipping public health leaders like all of you to communicate health information in an increasingly skeptical and fragmented world. We also run programs that support health journalists and creators here at the center. By way of introduction, since this is a storytelling session, we're going to tell our own stories. I'm going to go first. So we're going to take you back to 6:30 on a Saturday morning. I'm still in college. And from the look of the deserted quad, I might be the only freshman at my college who's up at this hour. I'm rushing. I'm struggling to run fast enough to catch the bus on the far end of campus without letting my tool belt fall off my shoulder. I knew I had to catch. Oh, you can't hear me? A little louder? Better? Okay. Should I start from the top? Yes. Okay, I'm going to just pick this up and I'm going to hold it. Okay, so just so this is the first time I've ever thought I was tall. I come from a long line of tall people and I am not among them. Okay, so we'll start my story again. It's 6:30 on a Saturday morning, and from the look of the deserted quad, I might be the only freshman in my college who's up at this hour. I'm rushing, struggling to run fast enough to catch the bus on the far end of campus without letting my worn leather tool belt fall off my shoulder. I knew I had to catch that bus, miss it, and I know from what happened last Saturday that I'm also going to miss my connection, the only one that's going to get me to my Habitat for Humanity job site on time. Last week, the construction manager had already assigned all the jobs on the 3-story brick row house that we were renovating. When I rolled in 30 minutes late, sweaty from the long walk. He frowned at me, furrowed his brow, and sent me to the basement to muck out trash, my least favorite job. I was determined to get a spot on the stairs team today. But when I turned the corner out of breath, there was my bus pulling away from the curb once again. I'd grown up in the rolling countryside of Pennsylvania where there were no sidewalks, let alone public buses. But I already loved Baltimore. Maybe not the buses, however, which seemed to operate in a schedule that had nothing to do with the one printed on the bus shelter. I was determined to find another way to continue to do the kind of work that I spent many of my high school Saturdays doing with my grandfather and our church, working hand in hand to build a home with the family that would eventually get the keys. My grandpa wasn't with me, but his tool belt was a parting gift when I headed off to college. Before the next Saturday had rolled around, I'd already collected the necessary signatures to start a new student organization, and in doing so, helped to allow myself to borrow a van from my college. That van helped me serve my new community of Baltimore, and it helped hundreds of my fellow students do the same. By the time I graduated, the chapter I'd started was one of the most popular on campus. It remains so today. And it has helped, at my time at least, 4 Baltimore families build and own their own homes. This same kind of determination eventually brought me here to the School of Public Health because 2 decades later, after I was out of college, I found myself leading a global science newsroom through the biggest science story of a generation, the COVID-19 pandemic. Over and over, scientists we interviewed struggled to be clear, to be concise, and to be compelling, to communicate uncertainty, and to maintain trust. A scientist myself, at this point, it was incredibly frustrating to watch, but of course not unexpected. I too had been through grad school and had never been taught to communicate except through scientific papers and talks. Then one day I got a very unexpected call. I was fresh off of an interview with yet another scientist who was struggling to explain their work. This one, however, was from a headhunter from Harvard Chan. Even after I said yes, there were a lot of barriers. I was new to academia, well, since grad school anyway, to public health, and of course to Harvard. But I was determined to make the Center for Health Communication a vehicle for the much needed changes in how we teach and inspire public health communication. 3 years later, that vehicle and my determination has helped hundreds, even thousands of folks more effectively share health information with their communities.
Thank you all. I'm Elissa Scherer. It's really nice to be here with you all today. I am also an alumni of Harvard Chan. I graduated in 2024 with my master's in public health in social and behavioral sciences. So many aspects of my time here during my degree were very pivotal to me, but there was one classroom moment that completely pivoted the course of my career. It was during my first few weeks at Chan in Dr. Lindsay Rosenfeld's health literacy class. At that point, I was still settling into Chan and wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to get involved with. And Dr. Rosenfeld was going through a set of slides, and she got to a stat that just absolutely rocked me, that 9 in 10 people in the US struggle to understand the health information that public health and doctors are providing them with. And I had that number ringing in my ears for weeks, and it made me obsessed with figuring out how in the world I could contribute to solving this problem. And the real answer to that question for me didn't come from what I was learning in class, but actually digging into my own experiences with health information and understanding what had really made a difference for me. When I first started college, more than a decade ago, I really struggled with my mental health. And this all really came to a climax this one night my sophomore year. That night, I had gone to a basketball game with my friends, and I'd had a really wonderful time. And as I was drifting to sleep, I remember just being full of gratitude that I had made time to go and have some fun, since I had really been struggling to sleep, to eat, and had been questioning how much I belonged at school. But that night, I was full of happiness, and I remember falling asleep very easily. The next thing I remember was waking up very suddenly, hyperventilating, and having a bunch of chest pain. It was so bad that I thought I was having a heart attack. Even though it was the middle of the night, I called my favorite doctor, my dad, and when he picked up the phone, I told him I thought I might be dying. But my dad, who has seen multiple people actually die in front of him, told me that I was being silly, that I should go back to bed, and hung up the phone. And I remember the feeling of tears on my face in that moment and the sound of total silence, and I just had no idea what to do. And so I called my friend, who listened and then Googled what I was describing. And that was how my friend and I, both 19 years old, found out what a panic attack was, from Google in the middle of me actively experiencing one. And in the weeks that followed, it was from social media that I got advice on how to handle these panic attacks and the advice to go to therapy, which I did. And that experience was what put me on a new path, where I switched to wanting to work in public health so I could help create a world where mental health was prioritized and discussed. And so it was rooting in that authentic experience of knowing that most people are getting their information from the internet that inspired me to seek out Amanda, who is starting amazing work at the Center for Health Communication to improve health information in the places people are getting it. And now I work to provide communication support and training to social media content creators, journalists, and public professionals like you all. And I believe in my work because it's personal to me. And I believe your work is for you all too. And I'm excited to be here for this training to help you all learn how to communicate your values through your own stories.
All right, awesome. Oh no, you still.
Okay, so now that we've shared, Amanda and I have shared our stories, we're going to set some norms, and then we're going to do a quick activity to get you all in the storytelling mood. So sharing our stories can be pretty vulnerable, and we want to be sure that we're all celebrating each other as we're trying. So just some quick norms: encourage half-baked ideas in all the people sitting around you, assume good intent, keep people's stories in the classroom so you can share what you learned here, but don't share people's specific stories. Listen actively, be mindful of the space. So if you've been speaking a lot, make space for somebody else to speak and vice versa. And then help to foster a growth mindset for everybody. And just a quick second, does anybody else want to put a norm into the space? Okay, cool. Okay, so as we're going to get into in a moment, stories live in the vivid details. So to get us in the mood to tell stories, we'd love for each of you to, you're going to turn to, find a partner, and tell your partner a moment that you felt alive this summer. So I will start to kick everything off. I'll tell you a moment I felt alive. About 2 weeks ago, I had the chance to go to Walden Pond, which maybe a lot of you know, it's right outside of Boston. And I challenged myself to swim across the pond and back. And when I got to the middle of the pond, I remember a specific moment where I stopped and I turned and I looked at the sky, and the clouds were so fluffy and I was out of breath, and I could feel my lungs expanding and the cold water on my skin. And I just was so grateful that I'd made the time to come. And I just felt amazing. So if you all can turn to somebody next to you and in vivid detail, describe a moment you felt alive this summer.
The question is, how are we getting back afterwards?
Well, we do have a microphone.
start? I didn't actually make notes.
Like a little after 3:15, I guess.
Now that we don't know what our end time is, like, I think that it was probably actually like.
This is also kind of nice for them to meet each other, actually.
Yeah, exactly. And tell each other something that's not working.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Not do the work meeting. What was the session before? Did you see the schedule?
He told me and then I forgot immediately.
Stuff. Public health stuff.
Yeah. I do remember they had an AI panel, and then I can't remember what was right before us.
Oh yeah, Fauci was yesterday, right?
Yeah, yesterday.
I decided I wasn't going in for that.
No, it wasn't even really on my radar, unfortunately.
Someone from comms asked me if I was going to go, and I was like, I don't have time.
Yeah, maybe we get like 30 more seconds. Good moments for the photographer, too.
Yeah. He's doing his thing.
Okay.
Okay, everyone, we're going to come back here. Hello. I'm notoriously terrible at getting people back to the front. I feel like this is the clapping thing. What did she say?
I think she wanted like one more second because somebody else had to share.
Thank you. Just some
I
good
forgot that
humor.
they all have mics.
That's nice, yeah. All right, folks, we're going to get started. And next, we're going to talk about why stories are important. All right, so as public health professionals, we tend to look to peer-reviewed publications, data sets to lay out an action strategy. But if you really want to drive change, to get people to act, you need to connect with them on an emotional level as well. And one way to do this, perhaps the most powerful way, is by telling stories. Storytelling is how people have communicated with and understood each other for thousands and thousands of years. In fact, our brains have evolved as storytelling machines. And there's a lot of recent scientific work that's revealed how storytelling has been used to drive behavior change and trust. And some of that work is shown here. But this session isn't really meant to be a lecture. Instead, we're really going to try to practice some of this storytelling. So we're not going to spend too much time here. But of course, if you have any questions about that, feel free to reach out to one of us after the session.
Okay, so we are about to teach you a specific framework, which is called the Public Narrative Framework, and it's designed to help movement leaders tell stories that connect their communities and inspire them to action. So this framework has been used to teach thousands of students at Harvard, as well as many movement organizers and social change leaders around the country. I learned it myself in a class that I took here during my degree, and then I went through a coaching certification program so that I would be able to teach it to other social change leaders, including Harvard students and alumni. So thank you for being here. Okay, so what is a story if we break it down? Stories using this framework are concerned with three major things: emotions, the moments that communicate the emotions, and the structure that you use to tell them. So starting with emotions, a story that inspires action should leave someone who is listening with a sense of empowerment and hope that change is possible through action. To do this, you have to be able to take listeners on a journey that taps into a challenging set of emotions, and then an action that leaves us with a sense of hope and empowerment to act. Those emotions both kind of the challenge and the hope of a situation are conveyed through vivid details. So to tell a good story, you have to go deeper than the surface of what was happening into the imagery and specifics of the situation. So when we did that kickoff activity, it was very much on purpose. And I could have, if somebody asks you what a moment you felt alive this summer was, I could have said something like, I went to the pond. But instead, I gave you all a detailed moment where I felt the cold water on my skin and the air in my lungs. And that really takes you into the moment and transports you, and it helps you experience the emotions with me. So the third thing to think about while crafting stories is structure. In the public narrative framework of storytelling, story structure mostly focuses on three things: a challenge, the choice that is made in response to that challenge, and the outcome from that choice. So we're going to break that down now. Okay, so here is a diagram to dive a little deeper into that structure. Every story has a character in it, which could be you, another person, or an entire community working together. In this story structure, the way that we frame a challenge is a challenge to your values. So when you're thinking of stories, you should be able to identify what value is being threatened through the challenge in the story. So for example, if you were telling a story about a school arts program being cut off, the value that's being challenged there might be free expression. Or depending on how you tell the story, it could also be equity or any number of other values. Then there's the choice. The choice is the action that the character takes to affirm their values. The choice is emphasizing that the character in the story has agency and that they are willing to act to affirm their values in the face of a challenge. Then there's the outcome. The outcome is what came out of the choice and how that uplifted the character's values. The outcome is important for demonstrating that acting on our values can make a difference for ourselves and for our community. And then the thread that ties everything together is the value that we're hearing in the story. So the value is highlighted through all three of these things: the challenge, choice, and the outcome. So the public narrative framework uses this structure of challenge, choice, and outcome for each of three stories that are linked together. These stories are the story of self, which is about the leader, which is you in this situation, the story of us, which is about the community you're leading, and the story of now, which is about an urgent challenge that the community is facing. So we're going to just very quickly walk through this overall framework, but we're going to zero in on the story of self and the story of now for the purposes of this workshop, just because we have very limited time. Normally we do this in an 8-week class, so we're speed running it. So zooming in on the story of self communicates your values and your call to leadership. It's meant to build trust with your community by connecting them to you and your values. And then the story of us connects your community to one another through a set of shared values and experience. So in the story of us, the community is the protagonist. The story should leave your community with a sense of solidarity and an increased sense of power by reminding them that they are a connected group rather than just a set of individuals. We're not going to, unfortunately, have time to go into the story of us today, but I'm very happy to answer questions about that after the session. And then the story of now is about lifting up an urgent challenge that your community is facing and providing people with a strategy and an action that they can collectively take to make a difference. So that you understand what this looks like when you put it all together, we're going to watch an example of a fully linked narrative that a student created with all of these components. And I do want to warn everyone that the story contains descriptions of suicide, so if you need to step away for a second, you are welcome to step out for the duration of the video, which is about 4.5 minutes long. And as you're watching, we're going to have a discussion afterwards, so do pay special attention to the values that you're hearing in the story, and what moments he's using to tap into those values, and then also pay attention to the call to action.
Give us a brief moment here where we get you this video. Okay, great. We taught this originally to some Brazilian creators, and I had this in Portuguese, so.
Because live video footage of him having a romantic encounter with another man was streamed live on the internet by his college roommate.
You mean to back it up?
Yeah, maybe to like 15.
And 604 feet is about how far Tyler Clementi fell after he jumped off the George Washington Bridge. Now, as we know, he took his own life because live video footage of him having a romantic encounter with another man was streamed live on the internet by his college roommate, just one of a very long list of young people who have taken their lives because of anti-LGBT bullying in the past few weeks. Now, I never experienced anything like what Tyler went through when I was at school, but I was bullied for being gay. You see, when I was a kid, I was a ballet dancer, and every week I squeezed into a leotard and blue shiny hot pants. It was quite an outfit, and I spent an evening practicing demi-pieds and pirouettes, and I loved it. I loved the discipline. The music played on the old piano, the feel of the wood beneath my feet. I even secretly quite liked the outfit. But my schoolmates and some of my teachers didn't like ballet as much as I did. And one of my teachers, a PE teacher, used to make fun of me. He used to say how girly I was, how dancing is not something that a boy should do. I remember the sneer on his face as I walked past, and I remember that he was the first person to call me a fag, which at 7 years old, I didn't really understand. I remember in high school how gay was only ever used as a term of abuse. And I remember one cold morning sitting in assembly while the principal intoned, "Homosexuals deserve our pity and our prayers." And I sat among hundreds of other boys thinking I was all alone in the world and that I was the only one who had this problem. Now, not everyone may have experienced something like that, but we all know, I think, what it means to feel alone, to feel like there's no one on our side. Perhaps you were too tall and the short kids made fun of you. Or perhaps you were too short and you got it from the taller ones. Or perhaps you were too smart or too dumb, or from the wrong side of town, or the wrong race. We all know, I think, even if just for a moment, what it feels like to think that there's no one on your side, to think that no one has your back. And all of us, if there are young people in our lives that we care about, can agree that we don't want this to happen to them. Imagine, if you can, what it must be like to come home and see a strange shape hanging from a tree in your backyard, twisting in the wind, the creak of the branch as it bends beneath the weight, and that feeling in your gut as you get closer and you realize what it is hanging there, who it is, who it was. Because that was Seth Walsh, 13, who hung himself from a tree in his backyard. It was Billy Lucas who hung himself at his grandmother's house. And it was Raymond Chase who hung himself in his door. And it could have been your brother, your sister, your son, your daughter, or your friend. It could have been one of us. So I know, I only came out in March this year. After 10 years after I first told my parents that I thought I was gay. And in those 10 years, I lost a lot of opportunities to make a difference. I was a high school teacher, and every day I wasn't out was a day I deprived the gay student of a positive role model. And I'm not willing to waste any more time. I have to act now. We have to act now. Because it isn't enough to let these things happen and then mourn them afterwards. We need to catch these kids before they jump. And there is something we can do to help as a start. Journalist Dan Savage has started a campaign, the It Gets Better campaign, to send messages of hope to teenagers who are being bullied because they're gay or for whatever reason, that they should have hope for their future, that they do have something to live for. And I think that if we made such a video, as Harvard students with glittering careers ahead of us and sparkling degrees, then we could make a difference. So we need people to hold a camera, to share their stories, to do editing and sound, to stand in a big group and say it gets better. No contribution is too small. And if you want to get involved and you're an undergraduate, talk to Tevin here. Do you mind waving?
Oh, hi.
And he'll tell you how to get involved. And if you're a graduate student, or if you just want to come along, from 5 to 7 p.m. in the Elliott Lima.
Take this back.
Okay, so now we're gonna take a moment to discuss. So if you all can repair up with the people you're with and talk about what values you were hearing called James to leadership and what moments he was using to illustrate those values. And then I'm going to ask somebody to share out in 3 minutes. So hopefully somebody's going to volunteer.
Quick question.
Yes.
Will you be sharing these slides?
We are happy to share these slides.
Okay.
I don't know how to get them to you, but I'll figure it out.
I wonder if I can't somewhere our cursor is back. Oh, there we go. Okay, now you have an actual cursor. I wonder if with the creators, we should see if we can download this video and upload it to. I tried. It didn't work. Into Canva.
Yeah, I tried.
It's because it's too long.
I couldn't figure out how to download it off of YouTube, and then also when I was trying to
Oh, I
upload
see.
the student, I tried like
You tried.
50
It
times
didn't work.
and it didn't work. So I just don't think it's gonna work. Unfortunately.
I was just trying to think how we could like feel like we're more seamless.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, just wait for me. Do you think we'll do this like thing instead of diagram? Do you think we'll do this again? Because I think if we do, like we could say this before, while I'm still screwing around with James getting it back off screen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just thinking.
Yeah. Alright, I don't know if we're gonna have time for the second video. I think we just have to skip it, which is fine.
Okay. Okay. So no second video.
Because I really do want them to be able to.
They should do theirs. I think it's much more important than anything else. We can always have this anywhere on the slide. Which we can just make this a view. We can make this just
I'm just gonna
view.
download a PDF. I'll send it. Would have been really good if they had paper for the. This is when they're gonna. I guess they can do it on their phones or whatever. But that's
Yeah.
Okay, if people can turn back over here. Thank you. Okay, so who would like to share what their group discussed? I heard you all talking quite a bit, so somebody has something to say. Right here. Oh, yes, please.
So we briefly touched about how he talks about his personal experiences, and even though he was othered for being gay, he sort of used that to unite and come up with this shared humanity that everyone has been, or most people have been othered for various reasons. And he was able to cite some of these examples related to unfortunate, suicides that have taken place as a result of this, but also telling that even if you haven't been othered, your family, some of your family members or your close friends have been othered, and why it's so important to take a stand and say that no, enough is enough. We need to stand up for people around us and sort of do something about it. So I think he was able to sort of find the shared humanity, and his description of some of those events were just so powerful. Like he was able to evoke a lot of emotion based on his descriptions.
Yeah, no, I think you called out a lot of great things, and at least for me, I'll speak for myself, but when I listen to his story, I do get that hit feeling in my gut, and it's from that vivid imagery that he uses. But yeah, thank you. That was a great answer. Did anybody else discuss? That was all great. what values were people hearing called James specifically to leadership? Like, what made you feel like you understood him and why he was speaking?
So we talked a little bit, sort of noting that he gave an example of a teacher that negatively impacted him, and then talked about his role as a teacher now, and sort of the value of the connection, and not being alone, and then sort of the impact that a teacher can make, and sort of his choice to not come out versus come out to the students.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, oh, yeah.
There's a famous song by Billie Holiday called Strange Fruit, and basically he called that out. So very subconsciously, he was hitting on racism in a different way. So for basically talking about lynchings, right? And so without explicitly saying it, so there's something in the subconscious that was pulled without being explicit.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. Yeah. No.
There you go.
Maybe this one.
Yes.
I think since this is about storytelling, I think the flow was so intentional and articulate in that he started with his story, and then he went on to share that it's not just his story, it's the story of people across the community, and then the call to action, what we can do about it, and asking them to join. That was beautifully well thought through.
So I really would love to hear everybody speak. We're going to do one more discussion. So we just need to keep moving so that we have time for everything. But I would love to hear all your thoughts. Okay, so this one, we're going to speak very specifically about what he wants us to do about the problem and what moments he used, those like vivid details that I was discussing to build the motivation for us to act. So if you can talk about that, and then we'll come back and then people can share. Okay, then I'll just give you like 1 minute.
So this is why I really should like try to do my hair.
Yeah, I also did not.
I had this intention to like take a shower, and, like use my new blow dry.
I'm like really excited for. Have you actually like fully used it?
No,
yet?
not
Okay, no, I'm excited for you.
Yeah, I'll try. I might try to pull it off tomorrow.
Okay. I did get the comment from somebody that you basically already discussed this. So I just want to bring you back because we are going to get to a point where you all are going to practice or at least reflect on your own stories. So if we could just come back, and does anybody have anything additional that they want to share on this question before we get into the next portion? I see you in the back. Yeah.
Yes.
I think he had very key pivotal moments within his narrative that was able to evoke thought processes to actually lead ambassadors and create ambassadors within his speech. And so I think he essentially wants us to spread the word and make sure that these types of issues don't happen. While he's well aware that this has happened historically, his primary focus is on the future.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. It was so helpful. We discussed in the second half of the other question, what moments does he use to build motivation for us to act? And we both felt that when he said, hey, as Harvard students, and all of us as alumni know at this
institution, that it is an absolute privilege, and we should use our privilege as a platform.
Thank you for saying that.
Terrific. Okay, so we're going to dive deeper into how you can tell your story of self, to give you some of the tools that James showed us there. So first, a story of self. It communicates why I'm called to do what I do, right? My calling, by sharing a narrative moments that show where, when, and how I learned my values. So when we listen to your story of self, we should understand the origin of the values that call you to do what you do. To do that, a story of self dives into a choice that you made in the face of an earlier challenge. To do that, the challenge, choice, and outcome framework is what you're going to use to highlight a moment where you acted on your values. And we want you to emphasize again that the challenge is a challenge on your values, right? It doesn't have to be more specific than that, right? It's a most important thing is to pick a moment that emphasizes your agency. The challenge is important because it shows that you act to affirm your values, even when it's hard. But it definitely should be something that you feel comfortable sharing. You don't have to share the absolute hardest thing that you feel ever happened to you in order to communicate your values. Okay, so leaving the story, we should all be able to walk away with a sense of why you care and how that connects to what you do today. So to make this a little more clear, we're going to walk through James Croft's story of self, okay, and break it down. As a reminder, the story that we showed you was a linked narrative, right? It had all three story components. For this breakdown, though, we're going to just focus on his story of self within that larger story. So the challenge in that story that James told was the bullies, right? The bullies who made James feel invisible in high school. And when telling that story, he used a bunch of vivid moments to illustrate this. His teacher's reaction, for example, and the moments in the assembly and how he was feeling at that time. And then there's several values, thank you. Thank you, Elissa. Then the choice that James made was to come out later in adulthood. He brought us in with details about how he made that choice so that more kids could have role models, positive role models like he had. I think one of the folks over here mentioned that. So the teacher, thank you. The outcome of that story was that he became more visible, and the work that he's doing now to reduce feelings of isolation for LGBTQ youth. And then there are a bunch of values that you could say pull that story together. The one that stood out most strongly to me was visibility, but also courage, community, which I think is something that I heard flagged here in the room, were also a big part of his story.
Okay, so now we're going to dive into the action part of things. We're focusing on story of self so you all can communicate your values and then how you're going to call to action. And then I wish we had time to get into the drawing your community together, but I would be happy to talk about that afterwards. Okay, so the call to action in this framework is told through the story of now. What is urgently happening in this moment that your community needs to respond to, and how are you going to respond to it with action together? And the best way to build urgency isn't through statistics. It is through telling the stories of the people who are most affected. So when you're telling this story, we should have a clear picture in our mind of who we are acting to help, a real person who is affected. Someone who's listening to your story should understand on a human level what the consequences of not acting in this moment are and what the future could look like for people if we acted successfully. And then a good ask, call to action has both urgency and then a very specific ask of the people who are listening. So the ask itself has several components to make it a good ask. The first one is that it's measurable. We should know how we will know that we have succeeded. The second is that it's feasible. It's something that the people you're asking to could actually do right now. The third is that it is consequential. People need to believe that if they do what you're asking, it will actually make a difference. A lot of the time when we're coaching this, people go for kind of like an easier ask, but a good ask isn't necessarily easy. It's one that makes meaningful change feel accessible. Next is that the ask is collective. A lot of asks in public health campaigns point people to individual actions that they can take, but people are much more effective when they are working together. So try to strategize how you can ask people to do something that brings them together instead of adding another thing onto their individual plate. Asks should also draw on the resources of the group that you're asking. So if the group you are asking feels like anyone could do what you're saying, they might do it. But if you make them feel like it's something that they're uniquely positioned to do, it makes them much more likely to act. And then another good thing that makes an ask much better is that it is visible. So when people see the people around them being brave and committing to something, it makes it much easier for them to be brave too. And then finally, the ask should be specific. People should know when, where, and how they are acting. So as an example, now we're going to diagram James Croft's story of now. The challenge in that story was that young people are dying by suicide. And the reason that he was so effective in making this feel urgent was because he painted a horrifying and vivid picture of what the young people who were dying by suicide, what that looked like and what that felt like. And the imagery made it real for us. Then he gave us a choice that the group could make, that they could make videos for young people showing that things could get better. And that was a good ask because it was all of the things that I mentioned. It was measurable. Making a video was a tangible marker that they had contributed. It was feasible. Most people could probably make the time to make a video. It felt consequential because he had just told us how much of a difference visibility could make through his own stories. It was collective. They were going to film that video all together. It drew on the resources of the people in front of him. He was speaking to Harvard students. This was called out, which was awesome. And emphasized how young people looked up to that and showing that there were queer people that were at Harvard can inspire hope for those people. So it felt relevant to them specifically. And he made it visible that they were going to do this publicly as a group so young people could see. And it was also specific. He gave a time and a place at the end that they were actually going to go do it. So people knew where they were going to go to act. And then through James's stories, we understood that the outcome of making the choice he was asking us to make would be that young queer people would have a more hopeful future. And then the value thread that came through both his story of self and his call to action, so it's important that those things are linked, that the reason that you're saying I'm leading in this moment is also linked to the value that you're asking people to act on. So yeah, his call to action was about the need for visibility, courage, and community, which he told in his own story and then was asking us to do as well. And then we did have another example, but I really do want to leave time for you all to work on your stories. So now we're going to take a chance to actually get to brainstorm your stories.
Okay. All right. So your story, remember, this should answer the question, when did you learn the values that call to your work? And it also should have a call to action. What's the urgent challenge that we're facing and how can we act together to solve it? So we're going to give you 5 minutes to start brainstorming, and then we're going to ask you to pair.
Yeah, and we also know that this is a big ask. And again, we do this in 8 weeks. So if you all just want to, even if you just want to reflect on one of the two of these things, you want to start thinking through, how could I be conveying my values a little bit more strongly when I talk to people about why I do my work? Or how can I be communicating my data with, an actual person that's experiencing the problem? If it feels too big to take on both, you can take on one. So we're going to give you 5 minutes to reflect on this yourself, and then you're going to turn and pair share.
So we were supposed to have an hour. We were supposed to start at 3, so we're supposed to end at 4.
Instructions are before, but you can modify them.
We can try it. Yeah, I think this is basically just as much time, right? Because this is the end. It's so hard to do both parts of this. Like, I was just like, you can't do this in 5. Like, it's just like, you can't even do one part of it. Yeah, it's certainly not 45 minutes. Oh, we gotta go get the cart.
Oh, yeah. I know where it is. I mean, assuming it hasn't migrated. Ooh, assuming I can get on the 6th floor.
Why would you not be able to?
Because it's a weekend.
Mine has.
Do you have everything?
No, I think I might just have
Yeah.
the third.
Well, we'll find out.
Okay. Somebody probably has.
Maybe someone here has a card. Yeah, we can
When
ask.
did we start the 5 minutes? I have no idea.
3:57, I believe is what she did. But I also feel like their pair
Oh wait,
sharing
they're already
already.
pair sharing.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they weren't supposed to when they were pair sharing. So I think we can maybe let them go to like 4 or 5 and then ask them for takeaways.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that gives, and we can keep it on time. And my guess is they're just starting here. And then they might have some
Yeah.
questions. They're never going to polish their story, right? I'm curious to see what Ninja puts together. Like, what would they say in his video? Would be his story?
Yeah, well,
that what he's doing?
I
His
asked
story
him to
itself?
share his story and why storytelling is important. So,
I mean, the kids will be in the car, so if we really came out of this with no cart, we could probably just like let Maurice sit with the car, and the rest of us can probably take.
It's
it.
going to be a multiple trip
Lot-
situation,
yeah,
though.
but we should find a cart.
Yeah.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
disaster strikes. They have a third kid with them. We can make it three kids to carry stuff. For the love of God. I mean, these people, they must have a cart. I saw somebody on the 3rd floor with a cart. I should have asked her. It didn't occur to me. With somebody, like, on our floor when I was up there, was bringing food up. So maybe it lives. You've never noticed one on the 3rd floor, like breaking in. So I haven't either.
Okay.
Okay. You all are overachievers, and you already jumped into the pair share thing. That did not work. Hello. Oh, thank you. Okay. Since you all already kind of did the pair share thing, I just want to, we started late and then we're running. We have probably 5 to 10 more minutes for any takeaways that people are thinking about or questions for us.
Yes.
This is sort of a very specific question, just in the current political climate where there are certain words that are taboo. What are your thoughts about rebranding? Like rebranding things but keeping the mission the same. So like not using words that may be frowned upon, but using different words but just doing the same things. And what do you think of the strategy? What are your experiences?
All right. So my training is in journalism. I spent 20 years in journalism, working in journalism before I came here to Chan. So my advice here would be always center your audience. Who are you talking to? What you want to do is
help your message, your thoughts, your values resonate with them. I don't really care about what words, this is my personal opinion, I don't really care what kind of words we say. To me, it's about the values, and you can communicate those in many, many different ways. So I would encourage you to think about what is your end goal, right? And focus on that. But it is a personal opinion. I think there's a lot of different ways that people think about this right now. Yes.
I was just wondering, more of a leadership question, in terms of communication, that we do have leaders, and I was wondering if they come to you, that want to tell the story of other people, which feels very extractive to me. So I've worked for organizations across industries where they love my story. They love to say the things when I was growing up, communities that I support or are part of. How do we, work with those leaders to really say, no, we need to put, individuals like this who can tell their own stories, because I get that they want to, be in the limelight, but you see what I mean? Like, how do we get them to understand it's not about you being a leader in front, it's actually, elevating your staff, whoever they are, to tell their own story.
I mean, I think we live in a world where the power of institution is fading and the power of the individual is rising. This could be frustrating in certain ways, and we could talk offline about the many ways in which that is frustrating. But I think one of the powers of it is a time when more than ever we are elevating more individual stories, right? And what I would say to that person is that it should be less about you as the leader translating the story and you as a leader elevating many, many messengers all around you, all telling the kinds of stories that get your values out to the folks that you hope to influence.
Yeah, and I think one good thing about this framework, and we do it a lot more in depth in class where, you're really kind of interrogating what you're trying to lead in this moment, but in this framework, the primary thing is that you are communicating your story of self, your values, the moments that you came to through it. And if that is totally disconnected from the end story that you're trying to tell about the urgent moment and people can't understand that connection, then I think there is kind of an aha moment where it's like, am I the right person to be telling this story right now? And so I think that it's really important to be reflecting on, why am I leading? What are the values that make me qualified to, or the experiences that make me qualified to lead right now? And that's part of why we use this framework.
I have a question. You've inspired me to share something about what I've done. I'm Dr. Michael Caldwell. I graduated in 1994 and currently at Mahari Medical College and School of Global Health, and the medical students came. So September 17th is National Constitution Day and National Citizenship Day, and I want to share with each and every one of you that I have helped to launch a new national holiday. You can look it up right now. It's called National DEI Day. And DEI meaning deity, meaning God. So I want you all to learn about it, give me your feedback. And for those of you who'd like, I have a special Mahari School of Global Health branded pocket constitution here for 6 of you who may like to take it home. You can search it right now, and I'd love your feedback. I did write an op-ed in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution announcing it on September 17th, and I think it's going to take off. I really appreciate your feedback. Thank you.
Yeah.
Very long, MS01 and SCD05. One of the things that was taken away from me is it's not someone else's job to do storytelling.
Yeah.
So often, including my own organization, and I'm trained as a decision analysis and analyst and epidemiologist. So often we hide behind the charts, tables, and statistics and forget that there are stories that behind those data points. However, it doesn't feel empowering until learning about these skills and the frameworks to really feel safe and confident about telling stories. And all too often, I could say it's the comms team. It's their job. It's someone else's job to tell the story. But as my colleague here at Sandra is talking about,
and storytelling is wonderful. I love it. The question is, and it's been around, the first technology, right? That's the first way that communication occurred between human beings. The question is today, with that swiping mentality, right? The clicking mentality. How do you get people's attention to your story as they swipe through their phone?
Yeah, we're actually teaching this to content creators, both last week and then we have our creator summit on mental health. So we're very much thinking about social media. But I do think that there's all sorts of techniques for being successful on social media. But I do think just from a pure raw storytelling aspect, it is those vivid details, like the hook, the getting into people's emotions. I think that glossing over something and saying, "Oh, this thing vaguely happened," that's not going to really grab somebody's attention. But, when you were listening to James Croft's story, that made you sit up and listen because it punched you in the gut. And those are the types of things that grab people's attention.
Yeah, I would add, if James Croft were on Instagram or TikTok right now, what he would be doing is telling his story in different ways, different remixes, over and over and over. But you would hear one thing consistently, his values.
In today's cancel culture, how can we be authentic and vivid and tell details, even if we don't use names, and not be retaliated against by our employers or other affiliations?
It's a very big question. It's also extremely personal to situations. Another thing that the center does is do a lot of digital safety training, help people really think about what kind of things they need to put in place. It has a lot to do with your environment, the environment that you're personally in, your comfort level with sharing, your comfort level for challenge, right, and attack. We work with a ton of creators working in space who it's like a full-time job to deal with the hate. I can tell you as a journalist, as a female journalist, used to be a full-time job to deal with the hate when I was on that beat. So I think it is very personal. I do not think it is a real part of dealing with being, online these days. But if you're interested, come talk to us. There's some resources that the center makes available.
Yeah, just very quick thing to add to that also. I think that, thinking through the lens of this framework, a lot of it also is about speaking to a community that you're trying to unite. So, it's not just you telling your story into the void. It's you telling your story to lock into another, like your larger community that you're leading with your values and resonating with them. So I think that, it just makes it so much easier, or not, it's still hard, of course. But when you're acting with a group and you know who you're speaking to, it makes a big difference.